Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Go to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans. Dude, how's everybody holding up after yesterday, man? 40-17. Chargers fall to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we don't even have time to lick our wounds as we've got another huge game coming up on Thursday. We got to talk about the prep for that game, man. We got to shake it off, get back to business, because it is a big one. The Chargers taking on the Denver Broncos, who, with this last week's loss of the Chargers versus Bucs and their win versus, I think it was the Colts, jumps them ahead of us in the AFC West as well as in the postseason race. And it's a lot. It's a lot kind of on the line coming up on Thursday that the Chargers have to force themselves to regroup, refocus, and get ready for this short week matchup because it is a pretty big one. We will talk a little bit about what happened in yesterday's game, as we're not going to have your normal post-game reaction show or post-game report, but we are mainly going to be focusing on regrouping and getting ready for the Broncos. That is going to be a very big matchup. The Chargers, they got to win it, man. They do. Honestly, yeah, the playoff race still very much so alive for the Chargers. Probably still more than likely going to make it, but we cannot let the Broncos get too far ahead of us, as that is a disaster for anyone seeing their division rival start to sneak ahead of them. So before we do get into the meat and potatoes of this, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Newcomers take advantage of the Kirk Cousins Monday Night Football special here. It's a great way to support my platform, have fun along the way, and with only a couple weeks left in the season, definitely recommend enjoying it while we have it here. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Your Chargers versus Broncos game preview. Very big game. Playoffs now firmly in everybody's mind, right? I feel like all of us as Chargers fans for the first time in a few seasons now, playoffs being at the foreground of our minds, like that is something that we got to start paying attention to, tracking in all of these videos with every opponent, with every preview, with every reaction. How are the playoffs looking? We'll get into that in just a second here. Before we do, guys, quick little blip. Okay, if you guys are really strictly here for Broncos stuff, skip to like 5-6 minutes into the video. We need to talk a little bit about what happened on Sunday, because it is important to reflect on this and to learn from this as we move into the last 3 games of the seasons. The Broncos, the New England Patriots, and the Vegas Raiders. These 3 games, very, very important. And honestly, this game, the Bucs, was also super important. If the Chargers were sitting at 9-5 right now instead of 8-6, there's a much different outcome or a much different outlook for what the rest of the season sort of looks like right now. Now at 8-6, you're looking at hopefully winning 2 of the last 3 matchups, which is still very much so possible, but also trying to keep the division ahead of you as the Denver Broncos are starting to excel at the perfect time, thus making our playoff consequences a little bit more complicated. So what happened in this game versus the Broncos? Honestly, guys, the more I've reflected on this, and especially after having a night to sit and think about it. Of course, I was at a Christmas party last night with my family. They got a good laugh at the whole thing. They're like, Director, what's going on? Like, you're down, you got tamales, you got pozole, you got chili rellenos. Like, what? I was like, man, dude, the Chargers really just crapped the bed today, Mom. And she's like, don't worry, man, you'll be fine. Okay, so I ended up having a good night. Seeing my family and able to with the support of my loved ones, kind of get in a better headspace. And as I did, I got to thinking about this matchup, and I thought to myself, every good team is going to have that week. I'm hoping and praying that that's what the case is for the Chargers here in week, was it 15? Just absolutely crap the bed. And I'm really hoping, like I was saying last night, that this is a one-off. It feels like the Chargers had a bad day. The defense, for the first time this season, really was the sole purpose of losing this game. I know that the offense had plenty to do with it as well, but the defense just uncharacteristically just imploded in this one. The first half, everything kind of seemed fine. The Chargers were leading. The offense was grooving. The defense was doing their thing. The second half, though, man, it just got bad. And the first half, we were forcing, interceptions and turnovers, and it just looked like things were going all Chargers. And the Broncos came out the tunnel ready to fight. Did not allow another point to the Chargers, and things just really fell apart after that. And I guess my whole point to this is, I think every good team, yes, has a bad week. I think the Chargers had a very bad week. I think, yes, in some cases, they did get exposed. The Chargers have not faced, I would say, an offense quite to the caliber of the Bucs this season so far. You could make an argument maybe for the Chiefs, kind of, but they've not been the same. The Ravens, sort of, but, they've also had on and off weeks. The Chargers versus the Bucs, though, that did show us a window into some glaring problems that they have to address. And honestly, you can't get better without games like these sometimes. And I know a lot of people hate that perspective. They want to sulk. They want to be angry. They want to, for lack of a better term, hurt real good so they don't have to, or so that they can avoid the feeling going forward, or try and help, push the toughness agenda of improving. I understand all of that, but honestly, truthfully, the Chargers will learn from this game. The defense is going to have conversations of improvement. They're going to single out guys. They're going to find ways to improve. And I do think we are going to get back to a lot of the things that we saw earlier in the year with the defense that made them the number one scoring defense in the NFL league. Maybe, yes, some of the caliber of opponent in terms of offense is gonna help mask that a little bit. Of course, Bo Nix could have a pretty good day, but he's definitely not like Lamar Jackson. I mean, Baker had a field day against us. But we are going up against Bo Nix, against Drake May and Aiden O'Connell maybe. The defense does have a chance to step back up. And I think when they are in a good place, when the defense is performing to the caliber that they have been this season, the whole team as a unit really does thrive. And I do expect to see that once again after this game, after this fumble, after this implosion of an experience that was Chargers versus Tampa Bay on Sunday. I think it will get better. All right. That being said, let's jump into this matchup, Chargers-Broncos. First off, quick glance. Don't know how much this is going to help, as we don't really have, much to go on in this week so far. So we'll just kind of take, again, a quick glance of what's going on with the injury report. Cam Hart had a concussion. With it being a short week, that could hurt his chances at returning on time on Thursday, which is definitely not good. Chargers need all the help they can get, especially when it comes to guys like, Cam Sutton. I think Cam Hart would be a really good counter or something like that. Would really hope to see him back. Will Dissly, we haven't heard much improvement on. Quentin Johnson, who was hobbling a little bit during the game last week, or just to say yesterday, he ended up coming back, so I would expect him to be okay. Elijah Molden, don't really know what's going on. Tito, don't really know what's going on. Hopefully a lot of this stuff is just precautionary. It's a short week. They want to make sure guys are healthy. I would kind of go in with the mindset that we are trying to prepare ourselves to be healthy for that game. As for the Broncos, again, couldn't tell you much. There's a lot of not practicing on here. If there's any Broncos fans in the chat that could help us out, with guys that have been out longer than others, it's something to kind of monitor, right? John Franklin Myers, who knows? One of the big one, Jaleel McLaughlin. I think he's their leading running back right now. He's got a quad injury. Don't know if he's going to be playing. They got some good backups, but again, we don't really know the real status of any of these guys right now. So just kind of, take that with a grain of salt, and we'll see if we get more information come Wednesday, as we do have a game on Thursday this week. By the way, my apologies to everybody in the Bolt fam and even the Broncos fans who had made travel plans and arrangements to attend this game just for it to get flexed into the middle of the week, where it's a lot more difficult to make a football game happen in a work day. But that being said, it's also very difficult for the Chargers and the Broncos to have to go in a short week once again in 2024, especially after a week like this last week for the Chargers too. There's a lot of momentum stuff going on right now that they're going to need to swing in their favor really, really soon. Now, probably the biggest question I'm getting asked and the biggest topic I'm being asked to discuss right now is the playoffs. And it's very fair to be asking, Director, how are we looking? Should we be worried? Are we out? Are we in? What's the implications of this game? Are the playoffs on the line? Basically is the biggest thing I'm getting asked all the time. And short answer, I'm going to say is kind of right, because with the loss to the Buccaneers, we still do have an 88% chance at making the postseason. You guys will see that down here. Chargers with a current playoff probability of 88%. That's still very, very good. If you look at the AFC teams that are on the bubble, they've got records like 6-8. All three of them with the Bengals, Dolphins, and Colts. And then, outside of that, doesn't really matter. But the Chargers are still in a very good position to make the postseason. Of course, the remaining strength of schedule is looking really good. The Broncos is a very winnable game. The Patriots is a very winnable game. And, of course, the Raiders are a very winnable game. Nothing's guaranteed, but that's not too shabby of a final 3 games to increase your odds at making the postseason, right? The big problem here, though, is the Broncos, they have just jumped us, man. And as a Chargers fan and someone who's been battling, with these guys in the AFC West for so many years, I don't like that. Their chances have now gone up to 91% to make the postseason, so more than likely you're going to see the Broncos in the playoffs. They got a record of 9-5, which kind of feels like that's where we should be, right? I don't like falling short, especially to division rivals. And I think this game can help even the playing field here. We could both be 9-5 and see, how that shakes things up going into the rest of the wild card race and who you're going to face. Because yes, technically we could still get eliminated, sure. If the Chargers maybe lose out, I would suspect that, probably somebody from over here is going to jump us. But again, I think the probability of that is very, very low. I think, again, the Chargers have to maybe lose all 3, if not, 2 of the last 3, which still seems kind of like a stretch for me. The big thing, though, is that we don't want to position ourselves to lose, especially to a division rival that would also have implications on how the seeding would work and who the Chargers would be facing in the postseason, right? Because if we lose to the Broncos and we go 8-7, still, in the postseason, we're likely facing off against the Bills, right? That is something where it's like, okay, our chances of moving forward from there are probably pretty low. You take down the Broncos, though, I would have to suspect that would push us up to 6, which would have us, facing off against the Steelers, maybe improving our odds to maybe even face the Texans. Who knows? As all, these teams 9-5, who knows? Who knows? I haven't taken a look at the Ravens' rest of schedule, but the Broncos actually have a pretty brutal last 3 games on their slate, including the Bengals, and I think the Chiefs to end the season. So if we were to win this game, I think the odds of us ending 6 or better are pretty good. But I don't know if I want to end 7, because just going up against the Bills feels like a very, the writing's on the wall of being a short-lived playoff experience for Chargers fans in 2024, which, mind you, just making it at all, pretty big achievement. But I want to see how far we can go, and I think the better odds show us improving if we face the Steelers or the Texans this season, okay? Now, that being said, the AFC West race, that's happening. And that's something I want in the foreground of this video, is that this is something that we're going to start noticing as Chargers fans going forward, as fans of teams in this division going forward. There's a big conversation about this. I don't know. It was probably around the time that Sean Payton got hired that there was probably going to start a war in the AFC West that was going to accelerate and turn it into one of the more competitive divisions in all of football. And right now, it kind of feels like we've reached that point, right? The Chiefs, they're still the Chiefs. They're 13 now and 1. They're still chiefing, right? The Chargers are on the rise. You may hear otherwise from some Chargers fans, but they are still 8-6. They are still a very much so a likely playoff team in their first year under Jim Harbaugh. They are on the rise. But watch out, man. Here come the Broncos, and that's what peeves me. And that's because they made a great move. The same move that the Chargers just made this season. They went and got a very capable coach in Sean Payton, and that to me is why this whole thing is happening, why the AFC West race is starting to emerge. It's indicative of the coaching hires in the division. So Peyton, Reed, not you, and Harbaugh, they really are, pushing this division up front and making them more competitive, more legitimate. And in the long run, I think you're seeing the long-term plans really come to fruition. Harbaugh's always seemed to be accelerated. Peyton's plan has taken a couple of seasons, but now they're looking really good. It's a dynamic that's going to continue to grow within this division, and I need the Chargers to get ahead of it, because we've been here before where it's us, we looking good, but the Broncos, they have a crazy defense. Here comes Peyton Manning, another Peyton, that was a thorn in our butt. It's something that we really do need to try and get in front of if we can help it, because the AFC West is just going to get more difficult. As for this week's matchup, the Chargers and Broncos, the Broncos are a real threat. And I hate admitting it, and I hate saying it after, it's been, at least 5 years or so, maybe more, of the Broncos just kind of existing, kind of hanging out. I don't know if I've seen them get right since Peyton Manning left the house, and now all of a sudden it feels like they finally got the thing that we're looking for. It was the head coach. Yes, Bo Nix is part of that equation. We'll talk about him in a second, but Sean Payton really did find a rhythm for this team, an identity for this team. And it's hard not to admit that as a Chargers fan, because we're undergoing the same process right now. Like, we literally are in the early phases of what has brought the Broncos so much success today. The turning over of staff, the handing the team over to a capable coach, finding that rhythm, finding that identity. It's happening for the Broncos, and they're in a stage right now where they're starting to reap some of the benefits of that, because now, on top of the head coach hire, they've also got Bo Nix, who, in my opinion, and I've said this since the beginning of the draft process, he's a very capable quarterback, right? And he's definitely turned into a name that the Chargers and its fans and its defense needs to pay attention to going forward, because he's young. I think he's just going to keep getting better. He's in a system where the defense is going to really help keep them in games. Honestly, a lot of things in the way that the Chargers are trying to build their team, you're seeing with the Broncos, which is pretty insane. And I think this formula is done on purpose. I think it's something that is specifically designed in a lot of ways to counter what the Chiefs are doing and to try and take the mantle from them. And you got two teams that are doing a pretty good job at implementing that and creating that with their teams in the Broncos and the Chargers. And you're going to see them. I'm going to say you're going to get to see them go head-to-head twice a year for a long time, which is going to end up being pretty fun. Because, yeah, Andy Reid and the Chiefs are always going to be a threat. It's something that everyone's come to expect. I honestly think that we're going to see a fun rivalry between the Broncos and Chargers for a while, because they are very similar. They're starting to rise around the same time, and they're going to be battling it out a lot, I have to imagine. For these wild card races, maybe even somebody, gets to the point where they can challenge the Chiefs and dethroning them. I think it's here, and I think it's happening, and I think it's something that we have to acknowledge and respect in order to give ourselves a better chance at overcoming. So who knows, man? Maybe the next 10 years, the next era of AFC West football is going to see a rivalry that shows the Chargers and Broncos butting heads more than other teams that we have in the past. Because if I were to ask you guys, like, who's the main division rival that we hate, the most, and that we want to crush every year, I would say maybe most people would say the Raiders. And I'm not going to push up against that, man. Like, yeah, I definitely do not mind squashing the Raiders whenever we get the chance to, especially after last season with that, humiliating loss that resulted in such a huge turnover for the Chargers and hiring Jim Harbaugh. I think most people don't like the Raiders, but I think realistically, in terms of, butting heads in the division, outside of the Chiefs, because everyone's gunning for the Chiefs, I think the Chargers and Broncos are going to be a rivalry to keep an eye out for, because they are very similarly built teams, and I think they're both starting to see success around the same time, which is pretty crazy. Now, Bo Nix, big reason why the Broncos, in my opinion, are actually moving the needle is because they finally hit on a quarterback. It's been a while. It's been a while since we've said, hey, watch out for the Broncos QB. I think literally it's been Peyton Manning and now Bo Nix. And Bo Nix, he's going to be a good quarterback in this league. Yeah, but the reason I'm optimistic in a Chargers defensive chance against him is that he is right now, this season, maybe for the next couple of seasons, he is still raw, right? He is still a rookie, and the Chargers defense can find success forcing rookie mistakes. You can say that about any defense in the NFL, but the Chargers, who have been particularly good this season, especially, and I hate to point this out, but let's, call a spade, especially versus offenses that aren't quite up to par. The Chargers have faced some really good offenses the last month, and it's been a lot more difficult for them to hold their opponent to 20 points or less. But now the last 3 opponents of the season, we're probably going to see them fall back into that kind of version of themselves, and Bo Nix is the perfect kind of target to get back on track with that. And it's, again, as good as he's been, you're going to see him throw interceptions. You're going to see him make rookie mistakes. And a big reason I think that the Chargers defense can take advantage of that is because the Broncos aren't holding back any punches with Bo Nix. He's seeing a ton of volume for a rookie, which is great because he's a good talent, but that opens the door for, interceptions and mistakes and things that the defense can capitalize on. Bo Nix right now is throwing for 35, 40 times a game. Very Justin Herbert numbers from seasons past. And his completion percentage isn't where you would want it to be in order to limit some of those mistakes. I think it's somewhere in the 50s or something like that. We can work with that. I think the Chargers defense can find an angle to expose some of the newness to the NFL that Bo Nix is bringing. He's going to be a great NFL quarterback going forward, but this season we're looking for angles, and that's the angle that I'm looking at. Bo Nix, who's thrown 5 interceptions the last 2 weeks, is somebody that I'm looking to pick off in Week 16, because we're going to need more opportunities this week. We really are. The Broncos defense is awesome. We need to find a way to get the ball a few more times than the Broncos to give ourselves a chance to get in front at some point. Bo Nix, very hard to sack. He's a very mobile quarterback. He ran for 60 yards on us last time we met up. Of course, the Chargers winning that matchup. Low-scoring game. I do think that it's something that the Chargers, once again, as he is starting to accelerate, still have to find an angle saying, hey, he's great, but he's still a rookie. Let's see if we can work with that. As for the Broncos offense on the ground, it's moved a little bit since the last time that we played them. I don't remember if it was Javonte Williams that was the lead back for them last time. It might have been McLaughlin back then too, but it feels like, is it Jaleel McLaughlin? Is that his full name? Has taken over as the lead back for the Denver Broncos. It almost kind of feels like they're taking a 2 or 3-headed running back approach to it, which is also fair. You see some teams find success in that. But their run game, funny enough, and this is why I think it's so important to put this conversation out there, it feels a lot like our run offense right now. Because again, they're kind of building a very similar looking team to the Chargers, right? And the run offense hasn't quite got the pieces that needs to thrive in the way that they want. And again, that kind of, funny enough, feels a lot like ours, right? They want to run, but are finding it hard to gain momentum. They don't have guys that are either living up to potential or injured now with McLaughlin or whatever. The Chargers kind of in the same way with their running back talent. I feel okay. I feel pretty good, okay with Gus Edwards and Kwani Vidal and then J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, who isn't here anymore, who is now on IR. We want to be a running football team, but we just can't find the consistency. And it also doesn't help when you have a big arm quarterback that's really easy to pivot to. Be it Bo Nix and Justin Herbert, both Oregon quarterbacks. I mean, it's kind of crazy the similarities you're starting to see between the Chargers and the Broncos, which is something to pay attention to. Now, McLaughlin can definitely get going. He is on the injury report, so we don't know if he's going to be playing as much this week. But they still do have Javonte Williams, who I've always thought was a really good talent. For some reason, he's been taking a back seat to McLaughlin, and I think even Audric Estime. Estime also a really good running back out of Notre Dame. They got the pieces to get something going at any given week. Will the Chargers be the team to make that happen? I hope not. I hope the Chargers defense is up to the challenge of slowing those guys down, because the pass game is already going to be tough enough to stop and slow down of the Broncos. I don't want a run game to have to worry about either. All right, so their run game is fine. I would say they're probably good for in and around 80 to 100 yards. But if we can limit that, that will certainly help our chances. The big thing to watch out for, though, is the defense. Okay, we all know who Patrick Surtain is. We all know that the Broncos are a very dangerous pass rush team. And again, very crazy to see the similarities here. And in a lot of ways, they're doing some things that we were really hoping to be this season. For instance, the Chargers have a whole bunch of big names on their defensive line to help generate sacks, right? We got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Tuli Tuipulotu, Bud Dupree, and we've been a pretty good pass rushing team. I'm not going to say we've been bad at all. Like, we've been really good, well above average, I would say. But the Broncos, who don't really have many names of note, right, coming into the season, have turned into the most savage pass rushing team in the NFL. I think they lead the league in sacks right now. They've got a great secondary to help capitalize on the chaos being caused up front. And these are all things that I preach every week that I want from the Chargers, and the way that we can see the Chargers building themselves up towards. It's funny. Again, feels a lot like ours. And it's working for them, because when their offense is stumbling, when Bo Nix needs extra help, and this is the way a football team should be constructed, the defense picks them up. They get cooking. Yesterday is a good example of that. They were losing the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of us had our eye on that score while we were watching the Bucs game. And all of a sudden, things turned. 3 fumbles, 2 picks later for the Broncos defense. They're back on top. Man, that's crazy. That's very similar to how the Chargers defense was in the first half of the season. And it's so similar, as a matter of fact, that now the Broncos are tied with us as the top scoring defense in football at 17 point something. I think 17.6 or 3 or something like that points per game. And it's going to paint a pretty good picture of what we're up against this Thursday, I should say. A very similar look in the mirror kind of identity in terms of defense, in terms of offense. They have a top 5 run defense, top half pass defense. It's going to be really tough to move the football for both of these squads. And it's intimidating in some points, but also it's an opportunity in some points, because the Broncos are kind of the hotness right now. They're kind of the big, talking point of, oh, look, this is the defense, this is the team on the rise. This is the game that the Chargers can maybe firmly put themselves back in that conversation. It feels like we fell off a little bit this last month. This is the opportunity to say, hey, man, that defense you saw in the first half of the season, that defense that's been so dominant, that is now tied for a top scoring defense in the league, we're still that team. And I think this is that opportunity to take that back. Jesse Minter needs this game. Derwin, Bosa, Mack, Henley, Tarib, everybody, they need this game. And I feel like it's a good opportunity to help get back on track, as the last 3 games are super important. Getting to Bo Nix, forcing turnovers, keeping the score nice and low, which you have to imagine is going to be the case here. I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game. It could even stay in the single digits for both teams. I would not, bat an eye at that. I'd be like, oh, yeah, for sure. That's totally a possibility. I don't think that's going to be my score prediction, but it could end up being that way, because both defenses can be very, very good. And I want to see that happen. I want to see the Chargers defense get back to its former glory and say, hey, yeah, we stumbled. Some very good offenses we just faced. But now it's time to get real and shut down the Broncos and find success against them. Now, how do we get past their tough defense, though, man? It's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie. There's something I've been saying since I saw it in person. It's something I'm going to keep preaching until, I'm feel otherwise. It feels like that moment. I was at the Ravens game when this play happened. I saw it in person. I thought at the second I saw it, I thought this. I was like, ooh, that's not good. When J.K. Dobbins went down with injury versus the Ravens, it feels like the offense really never found its footing again. And that's something that even against the Broncos defense that's been so good versus the run, I think it's going to be hard without him. Because last time we played versus the Broncos, Dobbins did provide a solid running foundation, logging 100 yards, a touchdown. The question is, can we survive with Gus and Vidal? I think maybe. But it feels like we're heading towards this one more time. The Duck Bowl. And this is going to be something fun we get to see every year. And again, indicative of how similar these two teams are becoming. The 2 Oregon Duck quarterbacks going up, facing off once again. You're going to see a lot leaned on the quarterbacks of this game. We talked a lot about Bo Nix and what he can do and how to find an angle versus him, but also Justin Herbert. He's going to see a whole lot on his shoulders this week, as that defense is going to be very difficult to penetrate, very difficult to get past. And ultimately, it's going to be on his shoulders to try and stay ahead, because this team offensively does not have a lot going for it right now. Like we just said with J.K. Dobbins, without him, it's fielded a little stagnant. The pass game needs help. The run game needs help. Everything needs help. You're going to see a lot on Justin Herbert because Justin Herbert knows how big this game is. The Broncos, as great of a defense as they are, the one angle that you can kind of get in is through the pass. It's going to be big for both teams, and I hope that the Chargers find a rhythm where Justin Herbert sees success, and we can really get to finding a little space, a little padding between us and the Broncos on the scoreboard because we are going to need it. And I have full faith that Justin Herbert can do it. I think you're going to see a very, similar story for Bo Nix down the road. But right now it's the Justin Herbert time, and he's going to have to step up and find some faith and some trust and his number one weapon through the pass, which is Ladd McConkey. It's going to be one of my last segments here. Ladd McConkey needs to be utilized more. Yes, as a rookie, it's a lot to ask, but he has been proven to be the guy for Justin Herbert. It feels like we stood a much better chance last week versus the Bucs to win that game if we simply trusted in Ladd McConkey, got him the ball, designed things up for him specifically more often than not. I feel like we can move the ball with him, and we really are going to need him this week. Tough challenge. He's got Pat Surtain and a really good defense in front of him, but I still think he gives us the best chance at moving the football and grabbing a dub. Finally, this is pretty much it. This is the battle you're going to see for the next 10 years. I don't know how long we'll have Jim Harbaugh with us as head coach. I hope it's a very long time, but it's going to be Sean Payton versus Jim Harbaugh, two legendary NFL head coaches trying to bring teams up from the void of darkness in the AFC West basement, and both kind of finding success around the same time. Of course, Harbaugh finding a lot of success very early. You are now seeing a lot of success between Sean Payton. It's going to be a coaching showdown. And I think this is something that is maybe the most important aspect of this game when talking about who's on top. Who's going to coach? Who's going to be out-coached? I think the Chargers have had moments this season where you feel, you got to do better. What are we doing here? We got to clean things up. This is also an opportunity for Jim Harbaugh to clean some stuff up. We talked about Jesse Minter. Jim Harbaugh needs some redemption as well. He's not had a perfect season. He's been great. He's been a big improvement. But he does also need an opportunity to coach his tail off in a division matchup that's going to have a lot on the line for the postseason and for the division rivalry going forward. So with all that being said, what's my score prediction? I got the Chargers edging this one out, getting the ship back on track, and finding good momentum going into Week 17 next week. With the Chargers win 19 to the Broncos 17. Very close game. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if it was a score of like 12-9 or like, 7-3. I think it's going to be a very defensive battle, but I think ultimately both quarterbacks are going to have to put on a show, and it's going to result in points. It's 19-17, very, very close score, but one that the Chargers need to try and edge out. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. Get excited for the Thursday night matchup. We will be live here on YouTube for the reaction show, as always, and getting ready for some fun holiday stuff. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. We'll catch you next time. And as always, bolt up, stay frosty. Let's go whoop some Broncos.